Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the absolute most sophisticated survival critical skills of the ancient world. I mean, think about it. Before modern labs, before little chemical testing kits, how on earth did our ancestors know which water was actually safe to drink and which water was just going to straight up kill them? Well, the answer is this mind-blowing intersection of biology, ecology, and generational knowledge. It all works together as this highly tuned survival mechanism. We're going to break down this ancient water puzzle, and honestly, you are never going to look at a random puddle the same way again.
Take a look at this 3D style rendering of a muddy pool we put together. Just imagine standing right there in front of it, freezing time right at that exact moment you hesitate to take a sip. Because today, we're actually going to dissect the incredible biology and ecology that's just firing off in your brain during that exact pause. Assessing water quality without a single piece of equipment wasn't just some neat party trick, right? It was literally fundamental to how the human species expanded and survived across the entire globe.
But to really get this, we first have to put ourselves in that headspace. You have to feel that visceral day-and-a-half survival thirst that forces this kind of life or death decision. You're thirsty in a way that is quickly becoming a massive problem, not just, the mild background thirst you get from sitting at your desk all day. We're talking a bone-dry throat, a pounding headache, and your brain is getting wrapped in this dangerous, fuzzy fog. You need water, right now. It's totally non-negotiable. And right there, exactly 40 meters down a rocky slope, is a pool of standing water. It would fix your immediate physical crisis, but you aren't moving toward it. Why? That brings us to Section 1, the survival pause, where we evaluate water safety. To really grasp why that hesitation matters so much, we just have to look at the brutal historical toll. Waterborne pathogens, stuff like cholera, typhoid, dysentery, giardia, these are historically the leading killers in populations that don't have modern water treatment. Communities that made bad choices when it came to their water suffered massively. Actually, when we look at archaeological bone evidence, it frequently shows these chronic bone changes that are directly linked to severe childhood gastrointestinal infections. So getting this right wasn't just a casual life skill. Having this ancient survival infrastructure built into your daily routine was, quite literally, a matter of life and death.
Moving right along to part 2, the biological warning system. Basically, nature's built-in chemical lab.
So, when you smell bad water and you get that sudden, intense wave of just disgust? That's actually your olfactory bulb speaking directly to your emotional center, your limbic system, and it's completely bypassing your conscious, logical brain. That's exactly why nasty smells trigger such an immediate physical reaction. Your brain doesn't sit around waiting for you to consciously ponder, this smells a little off. Maybe I shouldn't drink it. No way. It just hits you like a truck with pure disgust, so you back away immediately.
See, humans evolved to sniff out these invisible chemical markers at the exact concentrations where they actually become a lethal threat. We're talking hydrogen sulfide from anaerobic bacteria, ammonia from animal waste, and these very specific organic compounds from algal blooms. Our noses are literally perfectly tuned to these exact chemical signatures. The people who could smell these threats at super low concentrations, they survived. And, well, the ones who couldn't, didn't. It's really that simple.
But hey, it doesn't just stop at smell. Our visual system is also running this incredibly complex analysis in the background. Now, sure, clear, moving water isn't a guaranteed pass for safety, but visually distinctive water gives us critical clues. Like a greenish tint, that's a huge red flag for a toxic cyanobacteria bloom. Reddish-brown could mean iron or other biological blooms. Black is a clear sign of decay, and even milky or cloudy water is super dangerous because those suspended little particles basically act as life rafts for high bacterial loads. Ancient humans intuitively read all these visual cues, just like a modern scientist analyzes a lab report. Let's jump into part 3, Nature's Testing Network. This is all about animal behavior. You see, our ancestors didn't just guess and hope for the best. They essentially outsourced their safety testing. They constantly monitored local wildlife, who, if you think about it, were out there running real-time empirical health tests on the water supply every single day. The logic here is brilliant. Animals out in the wild have the exact same biological vulnerabilities to waterborne pathogens that we do. So if deer, zebras, elephants, whatever, if they're all gathering at one specific watering hole, drinking freely and looking totally healthy, that is overwhelmingly strong evidence that the water is safe. The animals basically tested it for you. But on the flip side, what if you're looking at a completely parched landscape and yet there are absolutely zero signs of animal tracks around a pool of water? That absence is a blaring, screaming warning siren that the water is toxic.
When ancient humans walked up to a pool and saw nothing but smooth mud at the edges, no hoof prints, no pad marks, not even a single bird track, especially during a dry season, they knew instantly that the local animal testing network had completely rejected it.
And that takes us to part 4, mental maps and ancient tech. Let's talk cultural intelligence. So, beyond just using their immediate senses and tracking animals, ancient humans also relied heavily on deeply encoded 3D-style spatial maps of water quality that were passed down through generations. This oral tradition was basically their version of hydrogeological science. They knew exactly which rock-filtered springs were good to go and which surface pools would turn deadly under specific weather conditions. They understood that moving water beat standing water. They knew groundwater from rock springs was geologically filtered. And crucially, they memorized these massive, spatial mental maps of their territory over hundreds of years. When a community elder told you, hey, do not drink from the eastern pool in the dry season, they were handing you hard-won, empirical data about when certain pools gathered too much waste or stagnated. Now, what happened if they were absolutely forced to use sketchy water? Well, they deployed some incredibly effective empirical technology. Obviously, boiling water instantly destroys bacterial and protozoan pathogens, but even cooler is their use of plant-based treatments. Get this, crushing Moringa oleifera seeds into the water actually introduces specific proteins that make bacterial cells clump together and just sink right to the bottom. And the craziest part, modern researchers have actually tested this exact ancient practice in labs today, and it completely works. It's amazing.
But let's say the bad water somehow slipped past your eyes, your nose, and your culture mapping, and it actually made it all the way to your tongue. That's when this deeply ingrained, culturally reinforced taste aversion kicked in as your ultimate diagnostic tool. The human bitter taste response is perfectly calibrated to detect compounds that are usually toxic, things like algal toxins or the gross metabolic byproducts of pathogens. It is quite literally your body's absolute final line of defense. If the water tasted even slightly wrong, our ancestors spat it right out, completely trusting a biological alarm system trained by thousands of years of survival.
Which brings us to the final section, making the choice, survival in action. So let's unpause time. We're bringing you right back to the edge of that muddy pool we looked at earlier, fighting off a day and a half of agonizing thirst. Right away, your limbic system starts firing off this really subtle warning about the air quality hovering just above the water. It's not like the overwhelming stench of an open sewer or anything, but it's just subtly wrong. Your olfactory bulb has detected trace amounts of organic compounds pointing to an anaerobic bacterial bloom, and it's forcing you to hesitate. At the same time, your eyes are picking up on the absolute faintest visual indicators of an algal bloom. The water just isn't perfectly clear. Looking closely at the shallow edges, you spot this slight murky green discoloration. Immediately, your visual cortex checks this against that transmitted cultural knowledge of what safe water should look like and flags it as a huge risk for cyanobacteria. And then, most terrifyingly of all, you realize there are exactly 0 animal tracks in the wet mud. The local testing network has completely rejected this source. In a bone-dry landscape where literally every single creature is desperate for hydration, the pristine, untouched mud around this puddle is just screaming at you. The animals know something is terribly wrong here. So, relying on this incredible combination of perfectly tuned biology and deep cultural intelligence, you make the survival choice. You walk away. You access that spatial map taught to you by the elders, and you remember there's a spring 2 kilometers to the east where groundwater filters through lighter granite rock. You know for a fact it's going to be cold, clear, and absolutely surrounded by the tracks of every animal in the region. You swallow that agonizing thirst, and you turn east. What this explainer really reveals is that our ancestors weren't merely surviving. They were highly observant, incredibly skilled scientists of their own environment. They analyzed complex ecological systems, they tapped into a vast distributed testing network of local wildlife, and they trusted a deeply ingrained biological warning system. Which really leaves us with one massive question. If they could do all of that, what vital environmental signals is our own biology still trying to warn us about today that we've simply forgotten how to listen to?